Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Snapchat. Once again, I'm joined by none other than Cozy Snap. Cozy, how excited are you for this new season?
Oh, thrilled, man. Thrilled. It finally has me jumping into an archetype that I haven't gotten the pleasure to play a lot, and I play a lot of Snap. And so anything that I can jump into for the first time or again and really start to master is going to be a lot of fun.
This season is truly one of the most exciting seasons coming to Marvel Snap. Next week, we're going to be talking about the Conquest mode in detail on the Snapchat. This week, we're actually going to be featuring a guest. We're going to be featuring Molt, and we'll be seeing Molt shortly as we discuss the top 10 cards from a move perspective that help you rank up. Now, on Cozy's side of the channel, we discuss some absolute hard-hitting topics. Cozy, what do we talk about?
Yeah, we talked about mastering move, everything you could possibly want to know about move outside of the top 10 move cards, which we'll talk about today. And then we talked about the new cards coming out and how they're going to impact Snap. A lot of great conversation there. I felt like I learned a lot from talking to Molt on my side.
Absolutely. And Molt is, without question, one of the masters of move, and you'll be hearing from him in the second topic. But for our first topic of today, we're going to be discussing the card acquisition changes. Now, this is something that we've been waiting for a long time. Second Dinner has been hinting at the fact that they recognize that card acquisition was a sore spot for a lot of people. When you have a game that focuses in on the collection track, like Marvel Snap does, there's advantages and disadvantages. A few weeks ago, Cozy and I, we talked about how the advantage of having that like launch window where you weren't sure what other people had and you were discovering new cards, that was really cool. But now we're into the deeper phase. A lot of people are getting Series 3 complete. A lot of people want to get the Series 4 and 5 cards. And when every card was coming out as a 6,000 token cost card, and tokens were basically worth their weight in gold, card acquisition became a sticking point in the community. Now, Cozy, they've addressed much of this. Now, they still have work to do. They've said that much, but I want your opinion on what I think is, without question, the biggest and most significant change they've made. In the next season, we have two cards that are coming direct to Series 4. In my opinion, this is massive, absolutely massive. Both Spider-Ham and we have Spider-Man 2099 will be coming directly to Series 4, and only Silk will be released directly into Series 5. Cozy, what's your initial take on that with regards to card acquisition?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I was shocked at the cards they picked. I felt like they were maybe going to go for I felt like 2099 was going to be the pool 5 card because it had a bit more I don't know, badassness around it or whatever. I thought that's what they would target. But dude, honestly, time and time again, between the series downgrades kind of in the past with the She-Hulk decision and stuff, they've shown me that they aren't just making the choice that they would probably make more money on and what it might be. It's huge. The fact there's only 3 cards coming out and 2 of those, and arguably the 2 that people are going to want to get are half the tokens. That and half is a big deal, right? Because that means one of those cards is the same as both of those, right? So definitely a massive change as far as excitement around it. They're both very different as well, and I kind of like that. If you move, you go for one. If you want more of the catch-all, you go for the Spider-Ham. And this is going to be big moving forward. You know, I know Ben Bro kind of hinted even barely that's all I have other information, but it's not ready yet, is how he said it. I don't know what that is too, but I find it fascinating that they aren't settled on how card acquisition works. And that's both good and bad. Don't get me wrong. You know, we've had the bad that comes with this. I'm sure we'll talk about it. But what's cool about that is that we know that they're trying to actually make it decent to feel and decent to get excited about and capture that old kind of magic again of opening these up. Now, the con of that is people need expectations and not expectations, but consistency. And hopefully we land on something that works. But man, that was a lot to say about just the subject, but Pool 4 alone is a great first step into the right direction, Alex.
I'm glad they're making these changes. I'm glad that they're listening to the community, and they obviously care about their game, and they want people to be excited about these new card releases, right? And I think that this movement towards new cards being available in Series 4 is a reasonable compromise between people that just want all the cards and people that understand you got to actually earn the cards as well, right? And having the collection-based system and ensuring that still you're gonna have to be a little selective, right? You might not be in a position where you can just buy everything willy-nilly every single week, right? You still might have to be a little selective, but ultimately I think this is a huge improvement. But the one thing I want to mention here is that they also did discuss the idea of Pool 3 players who are not in Pool 3 complete yet will have a chance to actually gamble their tokens on a card that they don't have. So they can't actually go in and craft a card, but they can basically gamble, say 1,000 tokens and say, okay, give me a Series 3 card that I don't have yet. And it'll just pop one up, which is, I think, kind of interesting. It's interesting in the sense that like they're like deciding they clearly don't want people to be able to target cards, right? You kind of can with the free card of the month, but with this here, it's like if you got the tokens and you want to gamble, here you go.
I don't mind it, but I also speak from a place where I didn't have any way to acquire cards from beta moving forward, right? Like I've always had the random approach, and again, as a casual player of the game, I think it's kind of cool of going in. If you haven't gotten a card in a while, you spin the wheel of opportunity, and then you get Magneto, and you're like, all right, well, let me go look up some Magneto decks, and yeah, you're going to get Baron Mordo every now and then. Like, it's going to happen. I remember 1 week in beta that I got Baron Mordo, Rockslide, who at the time was like literally a trash card, and Crossbones. And all those, I was like, well, it's a dead week for new card acquisition. And then I remember my brother was like, but you never have to get them again. So it was, that I don't mind that aspect. I think it's good. It's really good for those that are kind of close to finishing off pool 3. It's a fast way to get it. Because of series drops, they have to probably figure out that balance of when a card drops, they don't want you to be able to, if you don't have any cards left, you could just click that button one time and you get the new card for 1,000 and bada bing, bada boom. And I like that. Again, I think they're refining it, but I think it's a good balance.
The thing I love about what you said about getting Crossbones and Baron and stuff like that is that in the middle of that, you would have pulled a whole bunch of boosters. We were getting boosters in the collector's reserves.
Oh,
right?
Several.
I know. Like, we were getting a ton of boosters, and people forget about that. So when you actually think about the original iteration of the collector's kind of track system, we were getting boosters. You weren't even getting variants that often. You had like a random chance to get the card. It wasn't a guaranteed 1 in 4 chance.
There's no safety
It was
net.
random.
Yeah.
It was a disaster. I remember going so long and not pulling any Series 3 cards. So already there's baseline improvements.
But what I want to say about that is like one thing I think is interesting, and I don't know, maybe I am in the minority, but like, yeah, you should probably be rewarded for playing the game more. Like, it's so funny that how people are handling some Conquest. It's like, wow, you could play gold to get into these other leagues. It's like, yeah, you can, but it's completely free to not do it as well. And at the very top, there's nothing you get in addition outside of medals, which very little people are going to be able to do the infinite conquest anyway. But it's like, you get to, you simply just have to play. But time is money, right, at the end of the day. And there's going to be people that are going to choose to spend their gold there or on mission refreshes, right? And so with card acquisition, like, I like that you do have to play it. And again, it was very bold of Snap to do this in the card genre, because a lot of card gamers want to just, if they love a game, they want to just invest in it. They want to push their money in it. And the issue with Snap is there's ways to do that, but it's still very slow. And so you have to spend large amounts, but it wasn't even intended for that. So that's the convoluted mess, I guess.
I think that when the PC launch comes as well, you have an influx of new players. The opportunity to matchmake with more players of similar collection levels will increase. And I think that when you have those onset of new players, like, they'll have that new collection track system kind of like fully improved, these kind of card acquisition kind of improvements in place. And I believe that like the future of Marvel Snap is bright, because I think this PC launch is going to be very significant. It's going to be a big moment for Marvel Snap. And when they nail these things, I think those people are going to have a very good process, very good experience. And the people that are Pool 3 complete, that have been kind of collecting cards over time like we have, are getting more opportunities to stay on top of the new releases that are coming, which are going to have a huge impact on the meta. Another improvement that's been made is that we're getting more tokens more often, which is great. We're getting the new weekend missions that are coming as well, which is going to be beneficial to just acquire more resources across the board. And I'm actually really excited about that. But the thing that we had to talk about, okay, we've had a whole bunch of improvements to card acquisition. But Cozy, there's one thing we have to bring up, because if we're talking about card acquisition, we have to talk about the withholding of cards dropping to Pool 3. We did have a situation where Darkhawk and Null were held back, which now brings into question, when's Jeff going to drop? A common question I get, Alex, you love Jeff. Is it worth 6,000? I think it is. But is it dropping next month? I don't know. I don't know what to tell people. And so like now we had this cadence that was present before, where free-to-play players and just any player really could say, okay, I really like Jeff, but I understand that he's going to be dropping soon, so I'll save my tokens.
Yeah, so I gave my feedback to them immediately on this. And I think, essentially, first of all, like we're from what I just said earlier, like we're still far from what I think is a great system. We're getting there. We're working towards it. I am not like settled with it, and I constantly give my feedback to it. But what I will say is I think the next few like months will be awkward with this, and then it'll be fine. Like right now, like we're these cards going right into pool force. Great, that's fine. If there's more ways to get tokens, that's fine, right? I think the issue is with Jeff and Hitmonkey and these cards that like we lost that consistency, and consistency is so important. Now, to their measure, they never said that these cards are going to be dropping on this basis or whatever, but it's the same as the season pass. It's always been the same currency forever inside it. So if they stopped, which they did with like the mystery variant, and then they pulled that back because they're like, oh, damn, that was a bug, which, you know, we don't know. But the consistency is what matters, right? Because people plan. And that's what I mean by I'm glad they're changing things up, and I hope we find something that works really well. Because, like, when you could pick any card and spend 1,000, we had all these guides on what card you wanted to target, and people were saving up for decks, right? And then, you know, now we had dependable drops. And now we don't know what is going to drop and what's not. Now, some might go straight to pool 3. It's going to be the Snow Guards. And some are going to get held back, and that's going to be the Iron Lads and the Jeffs. I'm sure. There's no question about it. And that's the issue I know that they're trying to target is hoarding. Because it sucks. It's a bad feeling. I hate that, man. That's a really garbage feeling to have. But I do think that this is like a start in the right direction with it. But when it comes to the whole Knoll and Darkhawk thing, Alex, man, the biggest crux of that was just like the world's worst timing award ever. Like that was my feedback to wait for the day for that to happen. So.
A lot of people had been saving tokens for Darkhawk specifically. Like,
Yep.
Knoll's a great card too. Like, it has its place, but Darkhawk was so meta relevant for so many decks for so long. Wasn't it just last week you said that 6,000 tokens spent on Darkhawk on release is the best 6,000 tokens you could have possibly have spent in Marvel Snap?
Yeah, 100%. And it people didn't buy the card all month just for it not to go. It was such a bad communication standpoint. It happened at the day of the update. So truly, like, the biggest thing about it was just the timing. You know, like, if they release things straight to 4 and they figure it out, I'm fine with it, I think, in the long run. But again, just bad timing. And I hope they figure out the cards a bit more. Like, Shauna staying in pool 3. Like, I'm like, okay, like, interesting choice. But MODOK, yeah, I guess that makes sense. But again, I think they're still figuring all that out. But yeah, that was definitely garbage.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a second, and I think that a lot of the kind of inspiration for these moves is to conserve the meta, to kind of protect the meta a little bit. Because if Darkhawk gets in the hands of absolutely everybody, then Darkhawk becomes extremely prevalent. Perhaps in next month, right, when Darkhawk does drop to Series 3, I would imagine he has to drop eventually. Maybe one of the cards that they're developing, like one of the July cards, is going to be a card that targets the Darkhawk style list or targets the Darkhawk style gameplay. Because we've seen this before where they have this foresight where, like, you know, we've talked about, hey, well, the wave change makes sense with what happened with, you know, with Death and Venom and stuff like that. So, you know, I like to believe that they're trying to conserve the meta. And I think they recognize that, like, having a good, diverse, healthy meta is imperative to the quality and enjoyment of the game in general. So I don't mind them taking some kind of like chances with regards to the cards and the drops and stuff like that to conserve that feeling, that diverse meta we're all after.
It was the timing. It definitely was the timing. If they let people know at the beginning of the month, it would have been a whole, I think, just taken in differently, right? And yeah, I do, you know, as far as like the meta goes, yes, but at the same time, like, the tournament scene and things like that, I really want to get continue to grow, and I don't want to hold who could be some of the best players back because they don't have Darkhawk and things like that. And so again, we're still far from the acquisition system. I think they're changing it still. I think they're still going to work on it a lot. The direct to 4 drops is it's 50% cut, getting 2 for the price of 1 per se, and it's the 2 most sorted or wanted. That is truly a step in the right direction, bud.
We're definitely moving in the right direction, and we're also going to be moving to our next topic, where we are going to be bringing in one of the masters of move, Molt. Molt, thank you so much for joining us today. Tell us first, before we get into your top 10 move cards for climbing in the meta, What made you fall in love with Move?
Man, as I've gotten older, I'm 35 now, which isn't too old to many, but is old to a lot. I've found that I like problem solving in games more than I like playing FPS games and things like that. And to me, Move has the most problems to solve of any archetype in regards to not only dealing with what your opponent is playing, but dealing with locations and doing lots of math, like all the time, to try and figure out not only what's happening on your side, but on your opponent's side. So there's a lot of thought process that goes into Move if you play it correctly, but there's such a big reward if you're able to solve that problem and end up beating people when they weren't expecting you to.
It's remarkable to hear you talk about Move in such a way, because you clearly have passion for it. You're someone who's been playing an absolute ton of it. And I'm actually really excited to hear your top 10, because I'll tell you personally, I've played Move like a long time. During beta, I played Move and stuff like that. But in the last few months, not really. It's only been recently, knowing that the Move season was coming, that I started brushing up on my skills a little bit. So I have an opinion on what I think are strong cards, but someone who's truly embraced Move since the beginning, I'm sure will have a much more accurate depiction of what cards can help people climb to infinite in this coming season. So Molt, I'm going to hand it off to you to hit us off with your top 10.
So number 10 is actually a tie for me, and it's between Polaris and Jeff.
He sounds like me, Alex, where I'm told to pick one card, and then I'm like, okay, so I have 7.
It's the only tie.
I have a 7-way tie.
I was just gonna say, did you guys plan this?
Yeah, we are the same person. I mean, come on, man. By the way, now that I have a second, comment down below if you want Molt to change his name of his channel to the Multiverse. Okay, great. Let's so Polaris and who? Jeff?
Polaris and Jeff. Yeah, just Jeff in his own right is good, but if we're talking about Move specifically, I don't think Jeff gives that much of a benefit to the Move archetype. Polaris is good in regards to its control and the fact that it can move things, block things, all that kind of stuff. The 3/5 stat line is good, and in relationship to Silver Surfer decks and things like that, you would see that in there otherwise. And so those hit my number 10 spot, not towards the top, because I think there are better things that benefit from other cards within Move, but those are those are the bottom of it for me.
You could bring up a Destroy deck, and if you didn't say Jeff, Alex would be personally offended forever. He's like,
I'm so offended.
I knew it. I knew it.
I talked you up. I talked you up waiting for this top 10, and then you come out swinging on Jeff. How dare you?
No, Jeff outside of Move is incredible.
He made
but
the
Jeff
top 10.
inside of Move.
He made the top 10, Alex. Oh, I love it.
I guess
He made
that's
the
true.
top 10.
He shouldn't have even been in the top 10. So you know what? Maybe we're happy he placed. Jeff, my
Alex
favorite
is ready
card
to
Marvel
go.
Snap has placed.
Give him a hug.
I love it. Yeah, Polaris. I like that you have that low. It's one of those that I never can find space in my deck unless I lost to my 9th Galactus deck. It's one of the only ones that can complement. Is Miles just immediately going in there with her if you have Polaris?
Oh man, I like Miles. Honestly, Miles could definitely fit in here, but typically I don't throw Miles in for some reason because I can generate power elsewhere. If Miles currently worked with Moon Girl, which it doesn't because there's a bug, then I would probably make a Moon Girl Miles list that I think could be pretty solid, but it doesn't currently work. So Miles isn't up there for me.
I'm just surprised to hear that you don't think Miles is as good. Now, Miles is one of those cards I do try to make work very often. But I think you are right in identifying that, you're committing energy to make Miles work in the first place. But I almost feel like Miles should just naturally feel like he should be able to proc. Like with Silk, do you think his stock at least goes up with Silk?
I think that there are other cards. So for me, I like playing hybrid Move decks to where probably 80% of my cards are within the Move archetype. I've been playing a lot of Kitty Pryde since she came out, and I think she is a better 1-drop because Miles is a 1-drop in this deck. If you can move things, I would choose her and the effectiveness that she has over Miles Morales.
And that was what I was going to say. I tried to make Miles work out several times. Funny enough, 5 power is a poor stat line in Move decks. For whatever reason, there's just usually... It's not that it's a poor stat line, but a card with another ability that isn't just playing it for cheaper is more versatile to power up other Move cards, is what I found. So I cut Miles first each time, personally.
All right, number 9 would be Human Torch. So the reason the Torch is there is because of its subject to Killmonger. An extremely fun card. If you're looking at it from a fun stance, Torch is up there towards the top of move. But if you're looking at it from an effective, like, win percentage type thing, Torch is just a little bit too risky. I played Torch for a while with armor in my deck back when Death Wave was significantly higher, because I knew that armor had a pretty good, ability there that helped me. But Torch is in my number 9 spot.
I love Torch. I do. I'm actually on the camp that he shouldn't be buffed as much as I've thought about it. His power potential is too high for his cost.
It'd be too strong if it was a 2.
It'd be too strong. And there's 2, and now that we're getting more locations that help you move, that's the biggest thing. Like, that's going to start to really play a part. My favorite place for Torch is when Vulture. There's a deck where Vulture is your highest cost card outside of maybe Chavez, and it's that balance one you were talking about. That's where you get probably the most. I'm good with him.
Yeah.
I think he'll rise because of the potential of where move's going to go, but I like him at 9 here. Alex?
I've always felt that Human Torch was awkward. And it's simply because, like, you don't want to commit too much resources to simply moving Human Torch around, which I think is the trap a lot of people fall into. They're like, it's a Human Torch list. But, like, Deadpool doesn't care if he gets destroyed, as long as he doesn't get destroyed on 6, I guess. But, like, Human Torch does really care. And if you're kind of really committing to that, then it's just going to be a disaster for your board state. So, like, when I look at Human Torch, it's like, why wouldn't I just play Nebula? Or why wouldn't I just play, Kitty Pryde, like Molt was saying prior? Like, it just feels like it gets a little outclassed. But I think it was before Molt even mentioned that, like, as a 1/4, it's still kind of done its job, hasn't it?
Yeah, it definitely has. And that's the whole thing. If you're going to play it because maybe you don't have Dagger, like some people don't, and things like that, it's good. Don't commit too much to it. Now, if we're talking deck specific in bounce, Human Torch is up there at the top because you can pull it back twice and keep it safe with Beast and Falcon, which is hilarious. If you can tell your person is playing somebody who might have Killmonger, then you're able to pull it back and dodge it, which is awesome. But for the most part, it's just a little risky. But yeah, like you said, 1/4, incredible stat line. So if it helps you hit your curve and you know that you have Cloak in hand, you can throw Human Torch down, you can move it once, and then you kind of just forget about it. If it gets Killmongered, who cares? If it doesn't, then you have 4 extra power at that location. Number 8 would be Kraven for me. So Kraven is one of the cards that, I don't know, you put it at a location, and then sometimes it feels like there's this subconscious thing that almost forces you to buff Kraven. And a lot of times it can feel a little wonky. You put it on a location and you're like, I don't want to play there now because they've played cards there. I can't win that location. Like Kraven's at a location where somebody already has a lot of power. And you're just like, great. Now I just have a 2/2 that I don't want to put up to a 2/4 because that's a waste of a move. There are lots of benefits to Kraven because offensively you can obviously give power to it by moving things to that. But with other cards like Magneto and Juggernaut and things like that, defensively, you can move things and then buff your Kraven, but it just isn't up there in the top of cards that you would want to focus on. Now, do you throw it in your move decks? Yeah, 100%, but it's not one of the top performing cards in move decks for me. It's just there. Kind of the same thing with Torch. If you can get it up to a 2/4 or a 2/6, great, that's awesome. But a lot of times subconsciously you focus too much on Kraven and it can end up making you lose games for sure.
I feel like Kraven's best days are ahead of him. And he's a card that will retroactively always get a buff when move cards come out. Move locations, exact same thing. That always is what felt weird. It's like you had Bifrost, okay. And then like that was it, right? Like Kraven got the most play when Bifrost was a hot location kind of thing. I think my favorite part about him, if I'm being honest, is he doesn't have an ongoing or an on-reveal. So he can't be stopped.
Right.
He can't be stopped, and he's not going above 8 until like the last turn anyway. So that's, I like the pick.
The interesting thing about Kraven as well is its placement. I think that a lot of people, when they start experimenting with Kraven in the first time, don't really know where to place him in the locations themselves. I see a lot of players, like when I'm seeing people experiment with move, they'll often put him on the left, expecting to push into Kraven, but if you actually play him in the middle or on the right, he'll get the buffs with the cards as he moves with them too, right? So Kraven, I think, is a little more mind game centric than people give initial credit for.
Yeah, and typically final turn is where Kraven's going to shine. Like a lot of the other move decks will shine up until that point. You're able to get them to a place where you feel comfortable with them. But Kraven, you can kind of put on that location with the non-move cards. So like say your Iron Fist is over there, or some of the other cards that are functional like Cloak and things like that. And then if you play Heimdall final turn, Kraven gets big from the other cards that already did their job. And so there is that benefit from Craven in that regard of being able to play those cards on that location and get it final turn. But yeah, I don't know, doesn't perform too well compared to some of the other ones.
And I think that's what the important thing is about playing Move a ton, because the thing is it is a power puzzle to your opponent, how much you're going to have with Heimdall and Craven, but what does that do in turn? Most of the time, and for the first couple of weeks when everyone says Move still sucks, it's because it's a power puzzle for you as well, but the more you play it, you pretty much know the numbers off the top of your head.
I guess a little comparison, I would say Craven is almost like the old school Angela of the deck, to where it's like, okay, you kind of set it there, you forget it. If you want to send things to that location, you can. But before Bounce was as big as it was, Angela was just kind of a card that it's like, okay, this is here. It can generate power for me. But if it ends up not generating power, then it's okay. So Craven's just there to kind of stress your opponent out a little bit, but it's definitely not a win condition by any means in the deck. Number 7, I would put Heimdall in that location. So Heimdall is not in the top 5 for me. Mainly because of its predictability. A lot of times people predict Heimdall, but I think that it's also, I don't know, it's too one-dimensional for me. Do I play Heimdall in all of my move decks? For the most part, yes, because there are those certain situations where Heimdall is 100% the answer and it will guarantee a win for you. But for me, wanting to catch my opponents off guard, Heimdall is kind of in the probably 30 to 40% final turn played compared to some of the other things that I play.
Do you think that'll go up?
Yeah, I think it'll go up in non-move decks. I think we're going to start seeing Heimdall more in decks with 2099 and Electro or things like that. So as that final turn 6 cost that allows you to move things. So say people are playing Electro and they play Dr. Doom, they can move 2 of the Doom bots to one location, so now there's 10 power there, and like that sort of thing. I think Heimdall is obviously always going to be a staple in move decks, but I think that people need to be careful of limiting themselves to saying, okay, turn 6, Heimdall. If I don't draw Heimdall, then I'm going to lose turn 6, because that's not true. Like Heimdall is just kind of a ghost over all of move, to where people think, this is what I do on turn 6. And I think as soon as you get out of that mindset, you're going to really be able to unlock the potential of move.
I'll say this is the first time I'm surprised. Like, I'm shocked he's this low for sure. Because I think he is one-dimensional at the pure trade-off if he's moving everything. And that there's nothing else that moves everything. Cloak is close, but everything is what I think he brings. And so, like, now I'm, like, super interested to see the rest of your list, because I would have had him higher on my personal one. So I get it. 100%, but it shocked a little bit there. Alex?
The mindset for me with Heimdall is that it seems as though the threat of Heimdall is stronger than Heimdall itself. Like the weight of Heimdall on top of your opponent's mind is more relevant than playing Heimdall. Like the fact that they can be like, he might cha-cha slide left here. This might be a Heimdall play on turn 6. It's got to be a Heimdall play is actually better than playing Heimdall. So then you can actually open up more space for you to, hey, go right. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's kind of crazy how Heimdall's in this weird spot where, like, you know, I'm not that surprised it's that low. It hurts me because, like, I love Heimdall as a card. Kind of wish he was 6'9". Nice. But, like, seriously, like, I kind of wish he maybe had just a little more power, because he can feel a little awkward to play.
But I feel like with the new cards coming out, like Electro was like, all right, they got a ramp deck, here we go. But now it's like Galactus, Sandman, whatever. Because now we might have some other options, will that help him is what I'm curious to see. And because for 7 months he's been Heimdall. He's been left. You know.
Right.
So
I definitely think in those regards we're going to see him a lot more come down on turn 6, not moving a bunch of move cards, but moving maybe 2. Like moving 2099 and maybe someone played Vulture or something along those lines. But I love him, and he's very situational for me. But through playing the thousands of move games that I have my like combinations that I think of, and he's kind of a last resort for me in regards to final turn, if you will.
The move master. I love it. And that's why I think it's cool to have you on here. It's like, you know, you have played thousands of games, and so the wisdom is trusted for sure. Number 6.
The number 6 is Doctor Strange for me. For the unpredictable turn 6 play is typically where Doctor Strange lives, if at all possible. So if I'm able to say Iron Fist, Vulture, and then the Vulture to Cloak, and then final turn, I can play Doctor Strange on a location to catch people off guard. That's going to be really good. Like for me, move is all about catching my opponent off guard. And like you said, Alex, the threat of Heimdall is larger than Heimdall itself. And because of that, that makes Strange on final turn even better because people are threatened by the potential Heimdall. And then you play Doctor Strange moving sometimes 2. Like if you can get your dagger up to 8 or whatever, and your vultures at 8 as well, you can move both of those on turn 5 and play Cloak on turn 5 as well, and then just move one of them and then play Heimdall final turn. So I think that the possibilities of Strange to control, like if you think about Lady Sif in discard decks, you know what Lady Sif is going to discard, you know what Calling Wing is going to discard, that's why they're powerful. With Doctor Strange, you know what it's going to move, you can do the math, you can figure things out, and its flexibility as a 3 cost, I think is what makes it good on curve, like from 3 all the way up to final turn.
Yeah, I feel like Ghost Spider could really hurt Strange a bit because the thing that always felt awkward to me, and I get
Agreed.
it, like I cut him a lot because man, Iron is a 1/2. Ghost Spider is a 2/3. A 3,
Yep.
and I get there's probably some numbers.
I didn't put
behind it.
Ghost in here yet because I haven't played with her. She will definitely be in like my top 5 probably.
100%. I just feel like with Strange, like maybe the reason he's a 3 is because you get to essentially choose a card to move, right? But Ghost Spider feels like she'll be better in that. But I love Strange for like, oh, dude, like Monster Island Strange is like, oh, it's so, it's so great in that, right?
Dodging Shang-Chi with
yeah.
Doctor Strange is disgusting.
Yeah, like I don't want him as a 2/2. I've seen that because there's too many 2 move cards. But a 3/4 is what I wish could come from Strange. Alex,
Are you kind of saying that like Ghost Spider is basically power creep on Doctor Strange to some extent?
100%. You get almost more agency, in my opinion, because I can't tell you how many times I've wanted to play Strange.
I agree.
And I somehow boosted up some other BS card, and then now that card is X-Men Mansion 6, and I'm like, my Strange is worthless at this point, right? I mean, kind of.
That's where the math comes in, man. It's so frustrating. I even still lose games like that, and I'm like, man, I had that one, and I freaking moved this before I played Strange.
Yeah.
But his potential there and control and everything is why I have him in the spot that he's at.
I've played you multiple times, and you have whooped me with Strange. So I totally don't disrespect him, but I'm curious to see what Ghost does.
I do think Ghost Spider is going to be above Doctor Strange, not only because of the 2 cost, but just the same amount of control. Like the Ghost Spider is going to be the Calling Wing of discard, and then Doctor Strange is the Lady Sif. Like you know what they're doing.
I like that. I like that comparison.
Number 5 for me is Cloak, because of its flexibility as not only a 2/4, which is a great power stat line that can fit in lots of decks. It's kind of the lizard of this deck, but with no downside really, besides the fact that your opponent can move things as well. But being able to play it on multiple different turns and use its effect to the fullest. Like that is one of my biggest tips for move is utilizing the access that you have to move cards. And Cloak is one of the strongest like utilities that you have because you can move Dagger to it. You can move Human Torch to it. You can move Vulture to it all in one turn, and it only costs you 2. So the flexibility to play Craven Cloak or Dagger Cloak on turn 4 or Doctor Strange Cloak on turn 5, things like that is why Cloak moves up in that ranking for me because of that 2 cost flexibility to give you power to move and then be able to respond to it afterwards to where it's not later on in the game.
I feel like Cloak might be the one that people mess up with the most.
Oh yeah,
I've seen that. I've done it. I've just now learned to be playing them on where they've already stacked their locations heavy. So I've played Cloak and I'm like, oh god, they're about to move their Iron Man. Like they're gonna get more from this than I am. And I think that's where I can tell you play a lot of move because he's this high for sure. I like it.
The concern I would have is basically you Cloak and then you set up their Galactus play for them. Like that is kind of
no, I don't play it. If I know Galactus is coming, I'm like, crap, I can't play this card right now.
Yeah, but honestly, the 2/4 stat line is incredible. Like it's way stronger than people give it credit for, and the fact that it has like a symmetrical effect does complicate things though. It really does because but at the same time, like we should be designing our decks to take more advantage of it. But like what Cozy says, right? Like sometimes you got your opponent or they played it. Like for instance, you might have we talked about playing Storm potentially. You have Storm, they lost the location. Like, well, I'm moving out. I can't do anything with the storm location, so let me bring all the power I had there and bring it on over. So yeah, I think that utilizing cloak to good effectiveness does take practice, but clearly it's a truly remarkable card in move.
Yeah, and you could even see it fit within Sarah decks as well if you wanted to throw in a dagger with a cloak or something like that. Playing that on turn 4, giving you that power down. Like, cloak is versatile not only within move, but outside of move. Like I said, when Lizard got his nerf recently, I was like, okay, cloak is 2/4 with not too much risk final turn play, so I'm just going to be playing that. Number 4 would be Vulture for me. Knowing the amount of power that Vulture is going to gain, no matter what your opponent does, is something that is super reliable that you can depend on. With Dagger, you don't know if your opponent is going to play a card there. Obviously, if they have cards down, you know what Dagger can do. But Vulture is just that 3/5. The fact that it's 3 is also one of the reasons why it's below some of the other ones, because it can feel a little bit clunky at times. You're already halfway through the match and you're like, okay, I need to already be generating power. What's happening? His relationship with Iron Fist can be kind of tough, because turn 2, sometimes you don't want to play Iron Fist because you feel like you're wasting, and then you have to play Vulture, but then do you want to save Iron Fist Vulture for turn 4? So the clunkiness of it is one of the reasons why it's below some of the other power move cards, as I would call them. But the potential to move that, and just a 3/8, like you were saying over on Cozy's, like, that's bigger than Maximus. That's ridiculous. So moving it once, already really, really good. If you can move it twice, that's incredible.
Yeah, Vulture's a card they have to keep in check with why Move isn't getting all these move enablers, because he would become too good. I mean, I love the balancing the dude, because yeah, he's a 3/8, but really he's like a 4/10. Which if you look at the forecast cards, if it's Iron Fist, let's say, if you look at the forecast cards, it's like, okay, that's actually kind of balanced, right? But then you take it 2 spots. So it actually is very balanced in that sense.
And his ability to dodge Shang-Chi is notable too, right? Because he comes out he moves, he's a 3/8, he's under Shang-Chi range. And then if you're like, well, he's gonna Heimdall next, so I'll play Shang-Chi, and then like Ghost Spider comes out and he moves the opposite direction, like, that's how you donate cubes, right? So it's like, I like the fact that he ultimately becomes a 3/8. I actually think that it's a bit of a buff, honestly, because 3/9 would be Shang-Chi-able, and if they have initiative, then they could deal with it. But like Vulture, I think you're right to identify as a card that like could be problematic if Move had too many tools to allow him to just bounce around like crazy, right? So, but as we discussed, a 3/8, I mean, that's nothing to scoff at. That's a lot of power.
And then next, I've got Dagger. Dagger is probably my favorite move card, based off of a lot of the experience that I've had with Dagger, but also based off of the meta that we're seeing currently with a lot of the bounce decks. If you are able to move Dagger on turn 5 and turn 6 with Cloak and Heimdall, Dagger is going to get absolutely massive. I have gotten Daggers upwards of 30 and 40 power very easily. The only thing that makes Dagger a little bit difficult is you have to wait to play a cheap card until later sometimes, because people aren't kind of identifying the location that they're playing at early on. Now, obviously, if you have Cloak and all that kind of stuff, you can play Iron Fist Dagger earlier, but typically, if you can wait till turn 3 to play Iron Fist Dagger, then that's probably one of the better turns. You can maybe get 2 procs, get her up to a 2/6, then move her over to a Cloak location. But my favorite relationship with Dagger is obviously with Cloak. Turn 4, playing Cloak, playing Dagger, and then at that point on turn 5, you're like, okay, now I can see the potential that Dagger's going to have, because for the most part, people have shown you where they're kind of committing, where they're building. Maybe they have an Angela down, or they have something like that. It's like, okay, I can play Dagger, I can play Cloak, and she's going to get really, really big.
Yeah, Dagger, I love Dagger. Played a lot of her before her buff, and like less of her after buff, funny enough, just because of the decks I've been playing. I feel like she's a patience card. I can't tell you how many times I get her but not a move option, or I get a move option and then I get her on like 6 and I'm like, I was gonna play Heimdall, what the hell? Like, so that's where I've struggled with Dagger. But yeah, dude, like Bar Sinister Dagger, she's so fun, she's crazy, definitely really good.
The thing with Dagger with me is that like I'm pretty sure come this move season, when someone plays Dagger, I'm gonna get the never seen before pop up on the screen, because like I don't think I've ever seen anyone play Dagger against me. And I've played it a handful of times. So I have the Super Saiyan variant as well. So I'm like, okay, I got to play it. So I played it a few times. That's also an amazing variant. And I liked it. But hearing Molt and you, Cozy, talk about how much you guys and how much potential you feel Dagger has is kind of reigniting this, like, this kind of like the deck building in my head. I'm like, man, I want to get Dagger to 30. I want to get Dagger to 32, you know what I mean? And I think it is a card that has a tremendous amount of potential, and I don't think the general public is going to be prepared to deal with.
Because of the 2 costs, like think about turn 5, Iron Fist, Dagger, Cloak. That's already incredible because turn 5, most people probably have 3 cards at least at one location. So now you're already putting her up to a 2/8, and then you have Cloak, you can move it, and then you can play Heimdall. So the flexibility of Dagger being able to, like, turn 3, you can just drop your Vulture off. You drop him off, he's going to be there. Cool, I know I have Cloak. Next turn, Iron Fist, Dagger, Cloak, you move it, and then Dagger is just massive by the end of it because at that point you will have moved her 3 times in the span of 2 turns if you play Heimdall. So Iron Fist, Dagger, Dagger to Cloak, Heimdall, she's freaking huge.
And now also Cloak, Iron Fist, Dagger, Ghost Spider turn 6 play, and you're getting to move her twice in one thing. And I'll say this, I think the biggest winner from Ghost Spider is Dagger, without question. She feels like Morbius to me in the sense of, like, she is going to sit at the level she's at, and then all of a sudden 10 power, like that. Like, just instantly 10 power. And that's if you only move her once. And what's popular now, boys? It's just flood decks. There's so many decks with the board's covered. The board is slammed, and you don't have to worry about priority because your Dagger's a 2 until it's not, right?
I wonder if Ghost would work well in a list with her too, right? Because, like, if you're playing against the bounce list, to have all their cards down on the floor first and having Dagger move. Actually, does it make a difference? Hold on. Does it make a difference? Does an unrevealed card still count?
Move is the first option that
used
happens.
to not.
I typically find that that move gets your power so late anyway that you typically don't have priority a lot of the time. Would you say that, Mo? Actually, I only played 100 games recently. Like, what do you have priority or don't most games? Just what do you think?
If I get the cards that I want to get, then I have priority. So if I've gotten my Iron Fist, if I've gotten my Cloak, if I've gotten my Vulture, my Dagger by turn 5, and I've been able to play them and move them at least once, then I'm doing it effectively enough to already be winning 2 locations by turn 4 or turn 5. And then that is when you do start to run into trouble with Shang-Chi. If you're seeing somebody play Sarah and it seems like they're playing the Enchantress Shang-Chi list, you're going to have to be a little bit careful of how you move, which is why Ghost Spider is going to be incredible because that Shang-Chi is going to go down to even less percentage of success based off of the locations that you can move it to. But I feel like I probably have priority less than 60% of the time, but more than half of the time I probably have priority going into the final turn. My number 2 is Iron Fist because of its flexibility. The fact that it's a 1 cost, you can play it, like I've said throughout all of this, on multiple different turns to a deep, effective level. You can play it turn 1 with Human Torch, you can play it turn 2, and then turn 3 play Vulture. Like, the flexibility of Iron Fist in this to start things moving, which is it's the snowball of move decks, if you will. You started off at the top of the hill with Iron Fist, and then you get down your Cloaks, you get down your Doctor Stranges. Those make it bigger, but it wouldn't have started without that Iron Fist at the beginning.
I'm here for it, without question. It's a move enabler that's 1 cost, and that's why I think Gwen is good. She's a 2 cost, and that's why those 2 are just like, oh my god, because of that. It's like, it's insane.
I think it's super valuable for people to note that Iron Fist does not have to go out on 1. Like, it's one of those cards that legitimately you can hold for turn 5, or you mentioned before with turn 4 Vulture, stuff like that. Like, it does not have to be a tempo card on turn 1. I feel like multiple man almost makes it feel like it has to be sometimes. But generally speaking, like, you'd want your multiple man to be bigger anyway with your Hulkbuster, and then you can do some other stuff as well, right? So, because you can, if you actually play the Iron Fist
Hulkbuster.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of versatility with Iron Fist here, and I'm so happy to see it getting the love it deserves, number 2 on a list like this.
Yeah, you almost never want to play it on 1, yeah?
Oh, rarely. If you're playing Human Torch with bounce, yes, that's ideal. But no, for the most part, I probably don't play Iron Fist until, turn 2 at the earliest, but typically around turn 3 or turn 4 if possible. And then number 1 for me will probably come as a little bit of a surprise, but it is Juggernaut. Not only because of its control that it has final turn to catch people off guard, but also because of its relationship with cards like Doctor Strange or cards like Juggernaut, Iron Fist, Dagger. What are you talking about? That's incredible. And if you play Juggernaut first, guess what? Your Dagger gets bigger. So that's where order comes into play. You play Jug, you move things, you force them to fill up a location, and then you play Iron Fist, Dagger, guaranteeing your Dagger to get bigger. But Juggernaut is just like an incredible 3-drop that is, better than Arrow in my opinion now. Not better than Arrow in its prime, but now it's ridiculous. It's so good.
Shots fired.
I'd even react to it, the arrow thing, even though I'm the arrow lover. I think in my top 20 token purchases, the nerf happened to arrow, I had Jug at like 18 or 17 in there because you're getting the same effect. No one expects it. It's now, like, guys, look, Jug and Surfer decks are the time has passed. People know. People know it's going to happen. But in the move deck, and now you throw in a little Craven action in there too, maybe? Like, you get benefit off their freaking cards that you move.
There was a roller coaster of emotions watching Cozy there because, I mean, he got so excited. He got to pull out his Oscar Mayer Wiener kind of Juggernaut variant.
That's the one
there.
I use.
Yeah, and
So
then
good.
all of a sudden, Molt just takes a poo-poo on top of Arrow, and it's Cozy. I'm sorry, but I think Molt's right. I think Juggernaut is an amazing card. I gotta be honest with you, it's a card that people don't identify as a move card, though, right? Like, it's kind of misclassified to some degree. Like, it's just a card that, like, I guarantee no one was expecting Juggernaut as your top move card. People would have guessed Heimdall. People would have guessed, all the other ones, all the standard move cards. But, like, Juggernaut, it's a surprise to me. And after hearing you discuss it, like, I couldn't agree more, honestly, Molt.
Yeah, I think it's because it doesn't get the big fun power that the other cards do. You know, like, the only reason it's a move card is because it can buff Craven on your side, but it's that defense. You have to have control in these decks, which is why I rock Cosmo in my move decks a lot of times, Angela, Shang-Chi, that type of stuff, and Juggernaut just fits perfectly.
And the thing with Jug too is I played Snapster in some tournament, and I remember that I knew he had Juggernaut. It didn't freaking matter. In fact, it made it worse because on turn 5 he snapped, and I'm like, do I even play where I want to play? I don't even know if I'm allowed to play here, right? Like, it's a card that keeps its viability even if they know. I will say I'm shocked on the Arrow. I do think if Wave creeps up, which I still think is going to happen, on 5, then Arrow now or Heimdall could be such a cool option because you have the Heimdall to get the power or the Arrow for their 1 card on 6.
For sure.
Which is, again, that's what I'm doing here. Like, that's what I had in the deck I've been playing. And so, yeah, I am shocked Arrow wasn't there, but I get it because Jug is a cheaper one at the moment, especially without Wave. You're going for the multiple combo, and that makes sense for Jug. Yeah,
that's where my mindset is with a lot of these, is their relationship with other cards and their effectiveness with other cards, and that's why they move into higher spots because of their flexibility.
And with that, Molt, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. Guys, if you want to see Molt's content, we have a link in the description down below. Legitimately the master of move.
Well, yeah, thank you for having me on. I love talking about this. I'm excited for it to be meta. Typically, I'm against the meta. I like shifting things up, but I'm excited to see the thing that I love get love from everybody else. So I appreciate y'all having me on to talk.
Absolutely, man. And I think here's the cool thing. It's going to be meta, but only for the people that dedicate. And so it's not going to be oppressive, which is really cool about it. But yeah, always great having you on, buddy.
And now we're moving to our dev Q&A. We've got 5 questions and answers that were provided from the development team on Discord. And the first one is all about the Conquest mode that was recently announced. And so it reads, the entry fee for Conquest mode. And this is something that is a major concern for a lot of players. So I thought I'd take a second to kind of clarify a few things. So it says in the video, it showed an entrance fee for Conquest mode. How does this work? Is this to skip to that level instead of winning tickets? Or do you have to pay this to enter that mode? This is a great question, and the answer is equally fantastic. So Proving Grounds is always free to enter. And by winning 1 battle in the Proving Grounds, it gives you a free ticket to the Silver Conquest. Okay? Spending your gold on a ticket allows you to skip to that higher stakes level right away, making it a super effective way to quickly catch up on rewards in the metal shop. So essentially, you don't have to pay to actually get to the infinite bracket, but if you want to skip to the infinite bracket, you absolutely can. So if you start at the Proving Grounds and you actually win yourself through the Proving Grounds and you win yourself through each and individual tier, you can ultimately get to the top.
And, I love it. I think it's a good approach to the system. And, as we understand it, and what I really enjoy about it and what I'll be doing personally is instead of taking my time to Infinite, just going to get Infinite, and then I'm going to go into Conquest. And what's cool about Infinite only being open on the last week is that I can grind Proving Grounds, Silver, and then Gold. And then as I win Gold, I kind of accrue my Infinite tickets, get a little stockpile, and then as soon as it opens, I have let's say 17 tickets. Because if it was open right away, I would even be tempted to just blow through Gold, trying to go for 1 more chance at 6 wins. When in reality, I consider myself a decent player. You're a decent player. I don't care who you are. It's tough, man. 6 wins in a row. You can get 5, bro, and then you have a Galactus deck. You didn't have a counter. It's over. So I think it's cool that we now have this kind of mission leading up to the Infinite week of the season.
The second question is a really interesting question about how the cards are actually designed themselves at Second Dinner. Roughly how much time does it take to make a card? How much time is between the idea to the finished product with the revision of the kit, the coding, the VFX, and the quality assurance? The response was, we start by first working on cards about 5 months before they release, determining the season theme and the set of characters to explore. Usually we start with 1 or 2 extras and cut down to size. So this is pretty interesting to think about how they're actually 5 to 6 months ahead with regards to what cards are coming out, the design of the cards. And what I really want to bring up, Cozy, is the fact that some of these cards get data mined and then they come out and they're completely different than what was data mined. So there clearly is a ton of changing happening all throughout the kind of like work process of these cards.
Yeah, I like what Glenn said once. Somebody was like, I can't believe you nerfed High Evo. And it's like, you can't nerf a card before it launches. That's not how that works, right? And like, I thought it was very interesting. Essentially, yeah, it's crazy how much that they have to keep track of. And I like to think, like, even with like the Ghost Spider coming out, right? If Ghost Spider came out in January, would move be way too like powerful over a course of time, right? And we didn't have this control rise with Jeff and the Guardians with Nebula, and they probably build a lot of this in advance. But the entire process of making a card is so cool because I see something and it'll look broken, and then it comes out and it's like, oh, it makes sense in the time that it came out, completely.
Question number 3. Why is Iron Lad on curve when other similar cards are below curve? For example, Mystique and Absorbing Man both copy abilities but are intended to be limited to the type they can copy and are both below curve. The answer from Glenn was, we played a lot with 4-5 with Iron Lad, but enthusiasm for the card was mixed. When a decision like this feels close, we'd rather aim for the slightly high because the new content is too weak to enjoy. It isn't really new content. In hindsight, I think 4-5 would have been fine, but keep in mind plenty of cards went through a similar process and came out low. We're taking the best shots we can with limited sample.
Yeah, first of all, I thought the Absorbing Man Mystique thing was just like maybe Absorbing Man. Mystique makes like a lot of sense of like why those don't have power behind them because of the effects they're copying, and you get to choose it very directly. With Iron Lad, you have to have power to even have like a concentrated effort at that. Again, playing now borderline 1,000 games, man. I think I'm like 6 to 7 splits with Iron Lad. I have played him in everything you can imagine. He feels good. He feels like where he should be. 4-6 feels good if you get, Wasp or whatever comes out of it. And there's times where you high roll it and it feels super good and you're going to get the win. And there's times where you low roll it and it doesn't do a lot of good. I think it could get away with being a 4-5. I do think in the future, as new cards come out, it will lose its power. There's going to be an ongoing effect or something that it copies. And then people have to remember when a whole deck is going to be able to be made of Devil Dinosaur, Darkhawk, XYZ new cards, and Iron Lad, and there's only good value, that's when an adjustment might happen. But yeah, I like that answer.
Question number 4, and it's about High Evolutionary himself. It's a great card. His effect is amazing and really gives the game new life. Only thing that feels bad is High Evolutionary himself. His stats feel bad. Like every time he's drawn, it's a dead card. Not like he's even an option to be played. He's like Crystal, and he plans on buffing his stats to what they used to be. Glenn's response was that it was a concern that they shared early, but ultimately they didn't find a balance that felt good. They definitely found that it was more fun to keep the evolved cards strong than to weaken 2 or 4 of them and give him better stats, since that was the trade-off.
I think they nailed this, to be honest. God forbid this thing was any better than it was. I love that it's a dead draw in your deck because the trade-off is so good. Like Hulk is so crazy. Lockjaw decks are so nutso, and he kind of keeps that in check. So I completely agree. It's the trade-off of not having one bad card, not one outside of the main man himself. Like a 4-7 is what he was. That's insane. That wouldn't have lasted. I think it was a 4-7 or 4-6, either or.
I think it was 4-7. Like crazy, completely crazy.
It's nutso. That completely. And people, it's so funny, right? I always find people love something and then it gets good and then they hate it. It's like, this is just science. You think you hate them now, and it had a lot of backlash now. It was even worse. It would have been worse, if they didn't kind of tame them down. So yeah, this is I feel like he's a very good card, and it great release. Honestly, I think it's fine. Really good, really creative, but not overly crazy.
Question number 5 is one that I actually really like. It's about Marvel characters. Will you ever run out of new cards to create? If so, what would happen? And Glenn's response was very straightforward. I do not foresee that being a problem. Cozy, we're going to be getting a lot more cards in Marvel Snap, and I personally can't wait to see them.
Yeah, there's so many Marvel characters. I remember in one of our first podcasts before you were entrenched into Marvel, you were like, I don't even think there's that many Marvel characters, is there? And like the comment section just like let you have it. Dude, there's so much to pull from. And what's cool about this is like, yes, the Spider-Mans are really cool, but no one gave a rat's who was high evolutionary. And then all of a sudden it's high evolutionary. So, I think that the neat thing about Stan Lee and the creation of the Marvel universe is all of these characters are really cool. And there's probably boundless, endless, decisions.
So rest assured, there's always going to be a new card coming out of Marvel Snap, a reason to be excited. And as card acquisition continues to improve, you'll be able to get your hands on them more often than not. Cozy, what another wonderful week of the Snapchat. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you so much for joining us as you guys are, supporting us tremendously with your reviews on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, the likes you provide on the channel on YouTube itself, and of course, all your support in the comments.
31 episodes, man. 31 weeks of doing the Snapchat, dude. So crazy.
Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you on that next Marvel Snap episode.